The autumn wind carried dust and dead leaves across the Wyoming territory, painting the sky the color of old leather. Evelyn Hart pressed her face against the train window, watching the endless grassland roll past like waves on a brown ocean. Her fingers found the silver hairpin in her pocket, her mother's last gift before the fever took her. The metal was warm from her touch, a small comfort against the uncertainty ahead. The train car swayed and creaked, filled with the smell of coal smoke and unwashed bodies. A baby cried somewhere behind her. Men in dusty coats played cards near the stove, their laughter rough as sandpaper. Evelyn smoothed the letter in her lap for the 100th time, though she knew every word by heart. Miss Hart, it read in bold, masculine script. Your correspondence has been most satisfactory. I believe we shall suit well. I await your arrival at Silver Butte Station. The territory is hard, but honest work makes for honest living. Respectfully, S. Boone. She folded the letter carefully. 6 months of letters. And now here she was, a mail-order bride, heading west to marry a man she'd never met. Back in Philadelphia, they whispered about women like her. Desperate. They said, no prospects. They said. But they didn't know about Charles Hammond, who'd courted her for 2 years only to break their engagement when her father's business failed. They didn't know how it felt to watch your mother die knowing there was no money for proper medicine. The train whistle shrieked, and Evelyn straightened her traveling dress. Navy wool, practical and modest, with her mother's cameo at the throat. She'd sold everything else, the piano, her books, even her grandmother's china to afford the journey west. Meanwhile, 40 miles away in the small town of Whitestone, Jacob Reed knelt beside what used to be his well. The wooden bucket came up with more mud than water, same as yesterday and the day before. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of dirt across sun-weathered skin. Papa. Lily stood in the doorway of their small ranch house, her blue calico dress already dusty from the morning chores. At 7 years old, she had her mother's golden hair and gentle eyes, though Jacob tried not to think about that too often. Sarah had been gone 3 winters now, taken by the same blizzard that nearly destroyed their herd. Water's getting low again, sweetheart, Jacob said, trying to keep the worry from his voice. Might have to haul some from Turner's Creek. Lily's face fell. Mr. Turner said we can't use his water anymore. He said you haven't paid him. Jacob's jaw tightened. Levi Turner owned the biggest spread in the county and never missed a chance to remind folks of it. The man had been circling like a vulture ever since the railroad announced plans for expansion. Water rights would be worth their weight in gold once the trains needed steady supply for their steam engines. Don't you worry about Turner, Jacob said, ruffling his daughter's hair. We'll manage. We always do. But as he looked out across his land, 160 acres of struggling grassland backed against the Bighorn Mountains, he wondered how much longer that would be true. The drought last summer had killed half his cattle. The early snowstorm the winter before had taken most of the rest. He had maybe 30 head left, and winter was coming fast. Papa, are you going to church social on Sunday? Lily asked, following him to the barn. Hadn't planned on it. Jacob grabbed a pitchfork and started mucking out the stalls. Church socials meant questions from well-meaning neighbors and pitying looks from the married women who kept trying to introduce him to their sisters or cousins. Mrs. Hargreaves says you need a wife, Lily announced, perching on a hay bale. She says it ain't proper, you raising me alone. Isn't proper, Jacob corrected automatically. And Mrs. Hargreaves should mind her own business. Emma Hargreaves ran the general store with an iron fist and a wagging tongue. She meant well, mostly, but her gossip spread faster than wildfire in August. But Papa, all the other children have mamas. Sophie's mama makes her hair all pretty with ribbons, and Tom's mama packs him apple cake for lunch. And Lily! Jacob's voice came out sharper than intended. His daughter's eyes filled with tears, and guilt twisted in his chest. He set down the pitchfork and knelt beside her. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know it's hard. I just thought maybe if you got married again, you'd smile more. Lily whispered, like you used to when Mama was here. Jacob pulled her into a hug, his throat tight. I smile plenty. Not real smiles, Lily said against his shoulder. Not the kind that make your eyes crinkle up. Before Jacob could respond, the sound of hoofbeats made them both look up. Reverend Abel Grant rode into the yard on his gray mare, dust swirling around him. The elderly minister had been in Whitestone since before it had a name, and his presence usually meant either good news or bad news, rarely anything in between. Morning, Jacob, Miss Lily. The Reverend touched his hat brim. Afraid I'm here on business. Jacob stood, automatically putting himself between the Reverend and Lily. If this is about the tithe, Reverend, I told you I'd have it after I sell some cattle. No, nothing like that. Reverend Grant dismounted with a grunt. It's about your water situation. Turner's filed a claim with the territorial office. Says you've been stealing from his creek. Stealing. Jacob's hands clenched into fists. That creek's been shared water for 20 years. My father helped dig the first irrigation channels. I know, son. But Turner's got himself a lawyer from Cheyenne. Says he's got papers proving exclusive rights. The Reverend's weathered face was sympathetic. Thought you should hear it from a friend first. The sheriff will be by later with the official notice. Jacob felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Without water, the ranch was worthless. Without the ranch, he had nothing, no way to feed Lily, no roof over her head, no future at all. There might be another way. Reverend Grant said carefully, Turner's been making offers to buy folks out. Fair price, considering. This is our home, Jacob said quietly. Sarah's buried on that hill. I'm not leaving. The Reverend nodded like he'd expected that answer. Then you'd better find yourself a good lawyer. Son. Or a miracle. Maybe both. After the Reverend left, Jacob found Lily in her room, kneeling beside her small bed. Her hands were clasped tight, eyes squeezed shut. Please, God, she whispered. Please send us help. Send us someone who can save our home. And maybe someone who can make Papa happy again. I've been asking real patient-like, just like Mama taught me. I promise I'll be good. I promise I'll eat all my vegetables and do my chores without complaining. Just please answer this time. Amen. Jacob stepped back from the doorway, his chest aching. How did you tell a 7-year-old that sometimes prayers went unanswered, that sometimes good people lost everything, no matter how hard they worked or how much faith they had? He walked outside and stared up at the endless sky. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, dark and promising. But Jacob had seen too many promises broken to trust in clouds. Back on the train, Evelyn felt a shiver run down her spine. Though the car was warm enough, she touched her mother's hairpin again, drawing strength from the familiar weight. Tomorrow she'd reach Silver Butte. Tomorrow she'd meet Silas Boone and begin her new life as a married woman in the territory. The woman across from her, a farmer's wife with work-worn hands and kind eyes, leaned forward. First time west, dear. Yes, ma'am. Meeting your husband. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. No point in hiding what she was. Mail-order brides were common enough on the frontier, even if folks back east looked down on them. Word of advice, the woman said quietly. The territory's hard on women, makes them old before their time if they let it, but it's honest land. It'll give back what you put in, no more and no less. And sometimes, she smiled, revealing a missing tooth. Sometimes it gives you things you never knew to ask for. The train whistle sounded again, and Evelyn watched the little towns roll past rough collections of wooden buildings huddled against the vastness. Somewhere out there, her future waited. She gripped her mother's pin tighter and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. In Whitestone, the first drops of rain began to fall. Jacob stood in his doorway, watching the water darken the dusty ground, but he knew better than to hope. In the territory, rain came when it pleased and left just as quick. just like everything else worth having. He didn't know that 200 miles away, a telegram operator was making a crucial mistake, typing Rock Creek instead of Silver Butte on a message about train delays. He didn't know that fate or providence, as Lily would insist, was already setting its plan in motion. The storm was coming, and with it, change none of them could imagine. The train wheezed to a stop at Rock Creek Station, steam hissing like an angry snake. Evelyn Hart peered through the grimy window, squinting at the weathered sign that hung crooked from a single chain. The letters were so faded she could barely make them out, but surely this must be Silver Butte. The conductor had announced it 10 minutes ago. Hadn't he? She gathered her carpet bag and stepped onto the platform, her traveling boots clicking on the worn planks. The October wind hit her like a slap, carrying dust and the smell of cattle. The station was smaller than she'd expected, just a wooden building with peeling paint and a telegraph office attached. A handful of people milled about, ranchers waiting for supplies. A woman with 3 children clinging to her skirts. An old man dozing on a bench. No sign of Silas Boone. Evelyn checked the letter again, though she knew the date by heart. October 15th, 1888. Today. She smoothed her dress and adjusted her hat, trying to look like a woman worth meeting at a train station. Ma'am, the station agent, a thin man with spectacles, appeared at her elbow. You waiting for someone? Yes, Mr. Silas Boone. He was supposed to meet me here at Silver Butte Station. The agent's brow furrowed. Silver Butte, ma'am. This is Rock Creek. Silver Butte's another 40 miles west. The words hit Evelyn like cold water. But the conductor said, Yeah, Harry's been making that mistake all week. Got his stations mixed up after that telegram about the schedule changes came through all garbled. The agent looked sympathetic. Next train to Silver Butte ain't until Thursday. Thursday, 3 days away. Evelyn's carefully saved money had gotten her this far with just enough for a few meals. She couldn't afford 3 days in a hotel, even if Rock Creek had one. Is there a boarding house? She asked, trying to keep the panic from her voice. Mrs. Pritchard runs one, but she's full up with railroad workers. Might try asking around at the church social. It's just starting over at the town hall. Evelyn nodded numbly. What choice did she have? The Rock Creek Town Hall was a grand name for a simple wooden building that served as church, courthouse, and dance hall depending on the day. Evelyn heard the voices before she reached the door. Laughter, children playing, the clink of dishes. She paused on the threshold, acutely aware of her travel-stained dress and the dust in her hair. Absolutely scandalous. A woman's voice carried clearly, ordering a bride from a catalog like she's a bolt of cloth. Mark my words. Emma Hargreaves, no good will come of it. Evelyn's cheeks burned. She almost turned away. But where would she go? Inside, the social was in full swing. Long tables groaned under the weight of covered dishes. Children darted between adults' legs while women in their Sunday best gossiped in clusters. Men stood in their own groups, discussing cattle prices in the coming winter. She'd barely stepped inside when a small form barreled into her skirts. Oh! A little girl with golden braids looked up at her with wide blue eyes. I'm sorry, ma'am. I was running from Tommy Henderson and didn't see you. It's quite all right, Evelyn said, steadying the child. Something about those earnest eyes made her smile despite everything. No harm done. The girl tilted her head, studying Evelyn with the frank curiosity of children. You're not from here? Are you lost? Yes, I suppose I am. I got off at the wrong station. That happens sometimes. Papa says the railroad men can't read their own schedules. The girl's face brightened. Are you hungry, Mrs.? Miller made apple pie, and it's almost as good as... Her voice caught. Almost really good. Before Evelyn could respond, a man's voice cut through the chatter. Lily Reed, what have I told you about bothering folks? Evelyn looked up to see a tall man striding toward them. Dust covered his work clothes, and his dark hair needed cutting. but his eyes brown and wary, fixed on his daughter with a mixture of exasperation and affection.
I wasn't bothering her. Papa,
Lily protested. She's lost. Those brown eyes shifted to Evelyn, and she saw him take in her traveling dress, her carpet bag, the weariness she couldn't quite hide. His expression shuddered. "Ma'am," he said, touching his hat brim. "I apologize if Lily was—"
Papa.
Lily grabbed his hand and Evelyn's, pulling them together. The touch of rough calluses against her palm made Evelyn's breath catch.
Papa, look at her. Really look.
"Lily, what are you—" The little girl's eyes shone with sudden tears.
God finally answered us. Papa, can't you see?
The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Emma Hargreaves, a formidable woman with iron-gray hair, actually dropped her teacup. "Lily," Jacob's voice was low, warning. "We talked about this." But Lily stood her ground, small chin lifted.
You said God works in mysterious ways. Maybe he sent her to the wrong station on purpose.
"That's enough." Jacob's face had gone red beneath his tan. He pulled his hand from his daughter's grip, breaking contact with Evelyn.
I'm sorry, ma'am. My daughter has ideas sometimes.
Ideas? Emma Hargreaves had recovered enough to bustle over, eyes bright with curiosity. What kind of ideas would those be? Jacob Reed.
Nothing. Mrs. Hargreaves, Lily just... I wrote a letter,
Lily announced to the room at large.
To the newspaper in Cheyenne. The one with the advertisements for mail-order brides.
If the room had been quiet before, now it was silent as a tomb. Jacob looked like he'd been struck by lightning.
You did what?
He whispered. Lily's courage faltered slightly under her father's stare, but she pressed on.
You were so sad, Papa, and I heard Mrs. Hargreaves saying you needed a wife, and Tommy's mother said the same thing, and even Reverend Grant said a man shouldn't raise a child alone. So I wrote a letter. I said you were looking for a wife and put your name on it and everything.
Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. She fumbled in her bag for Silas Boone's letters, checking the address. The seal, she'd never paid attention to the seal before, but now she saw it clearly. Not from Silver Butte at all, but from...
These letters,
she said faintly. They're not from Silas Boone. They're from you. Jacob snatched one of the letters, scanning it quickly. His face went from red to white.
This isn't my handwriting. I never...
He stopped, staring at the signature.
S. Boone. Silas Boone from Silver Butte.
You know him? Evelyn asked.
Everyone knows him. Owns the biggest mine in the territory. And the meanest temper.
Jacob thrust the letter back at her.
Ma'am, I don't know what game this is, but I never wrote to you. I never advertised for a bride. I did,
Lily said in a small voice.
But I only wrote once, asking for someone nice to come. I don't know about these other letters.
Emma Hargreaves picked up one of the fallen letters, adjusting her spectacles. This talks about meeting at Silver Butte Station. If Lily wrote to the marriage broker,
how did Silas Boone end up?
Her eyes widened.
Oh, my stars. The broker must have mixed up the requests. Sent Boone's letters to Miss Hart,
Evelyn supplied weakly.
Evelyn Hart.
Sent Boone's letters to Miss Hart here, thinking they were from Jacob. Emma looked almost gleeful at the scandal. What a pickle.
It's not a pickle,
Jacob said firmly.
It's a mistake.
Miss Hart was meant for Silas Boone in Silver Butte. She can catch the next train on Thursday and... Jacob Reed. Reverend Grant interrupted, pushing through the crowd. Are you truly going to send this young woman to Silas Boone? You know his reputation. His last housekeeper left after only a month, and she wouldn't say why. That's not my concern, Jacob said, but Evelyn noticed he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes.
Papa,
Lily tugged on his sleeve.
She can't go to the mean mine man? What if he's cruel to her?
The world is full of cruel people. Lily, we can't save everyone.
But we can save her. Lily's voice rose. She's right here, and she needs help. And isn't that what Mama always said, that we should help people when God puts them in our path? Jacob flinched as if slapped. The room watched, breathless, as father and daughter stared at each other. Evelyn found her voice. I don't need saving. I made an agreement. I'll honor it. With all due respect, Miss Hart, Reverend Grant said gently. You made an agreement based on false information. Those letters weren't from the man you thought. Surely that changes things. Evelyn touched her mother's hairpin, drawing strength. I came west to marry, to make a new life, if not with Mr. Reed, then with Mr. Boone. Silas Boone goes through housekeepers like most men go through horseshoes, Emma muttered. And there's rumors about why. Rumors aren't facts, Evelyn said, though her stomach churned. No, but bruises are, an older woman said quietly from the back. My niece worked at the Boone house. She came back with bruises she wouldn't explain. The room erupted in arguments. Some said Evelyn should honor her agreement. Others insisted she couldn't be held to a contract made under false pretenses. Through it all, Jacob stood silent, his jaw tight, while Lily clung to his hand and watched Evelyn with those hopeful eyes. Finally, Reverend Grant raised his hands for silence. Seems to me we're getting ahead of ourselves. Miss Hart has no obligation to anyone based on fraudulent letters. The question is, what happens now? She needs accommodation until Thursday's train. She could stay with me, Emma offered. But my boarding house is full of railroad workers. Wouldn't be proper. A young lady alone among all those men. The parsonage has a spare room, Reverend Grant said. But my wife's sister is visiting with her 5 children. Bit crowded. She could stay with us, Lily said suddenly. We have Mama's sewing room. Nobody uses it now. Absolutely not, Jacob said. Why not? Lily challenged. You just said we need someone to help with chores, since you can't pay the Henderson boy anymore. She could help for a few days and trade for room and board. Lily. It's the Christian thing to do. Papa, you always say we should be good Samaritans. Evelyn saw Jacob's hands clench and unclench. She understood his predicament, a widower taking in a young woman, even temporarily, would set tongues wagging. But what choice did any of them have? I'm a hard worker, she said quietly. I can cook, clean, tend animals. I wouldn't be a burden. Jacob looked at her then. Really looked at her for the first time. She saw him notice the careful mending on her cuffs, the worn spots on her boots that she'd tried to polish away. Saw him recognize a fellow person hanging on by their fingernails. 3 days, he said finally. Until the Thursday train. You help with chores in exchange for room and board. Nothing more. Papa, Lily started to protest, but he held up a hand. That's the offer. Miss Hart, take it or leave it. Evelyn nodded. I accept, thank you. The room burst into excited chatter again. Emma Hargreaves was already speculating about what would happen when Silas Boone found out his bride had gone missing. The other women whispered about the propriety of the arrangement. But Evelyn noticed none of that. She was watching the way Lily slipped her small hand into her father's larger one, the way Jacob's stern expression softened just a fraction when he looked down at his daughter. Come on, then, Jacob said gruffly. Ranch is 5 miles out. We'll need to leave soon if we're going to make it before dark. As they prepared to leave, Lily tugged on Evelyn's skirt. Miss Evelyn, I'm sorry I caused all this trouble. I just wanted Papa to be happy again. Evelyn knelt down to the girl's level. Sometimes the best things come from trouble, she said, thinking of her own broken engagement, her mother's death, the desperate circumstances that had driven her west. We just have to wait and see. Lily smiled then, bright as sunshine. I knew God would answer. He just took a roundabout way, like Papa does when he's avoiding the mud holes. Despite everything, the embarrassment, the uncertainty, the complete derailment of her plans, Evelyn found herself smiling back. 3 days.
She could manage 3 days. She didn't know that at that very moment, in Silver Butte. Silas Boone was reading a telegram about his missing bride with a face like thunder. Didn't know that Levi Turner was already scheming about how to use this scandal to his advantage. All she knew was that a little girl's hand felt warm in hers as they walked toward the wagon, and for the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she didn't feel quite so alone. The first morning at the Reed Ranch, Evelyn woke to the sound of metal clanging against stone. She dressed quickly in her most practical dress, a brown calico that had seen better days, and followed the noise to find Jacob wrestling with the water pump behind the house.
"Blasted thing,"
he muttered, not noticing her approach.
"Work, you stubborn piece of—"
The leather gasket's worn through, Evelyn said. Jacob jerked upright, nearly dropping his wrench. "Miss Hart, you shouldn't be out here." "Why? Because it's men's work." She moved closer, studying the pump mechanism. "My father ran a hardware store. I spent half my childhood learning how things fit together." "That's so." His tone was skeptical. "May I?" She gestured to the pump. When he stepped aside, she knelt and examined the assembly. "See here, the gasket's not making a proper seal. That's why you're getting air instead of water. Do you have any spare leather?" "In the barn. But—" "Would you fetch it and some tallow if you have it?" 20 minutes later, water gushed from the pump in a steady stream. Jacob worked the handle. His expression caught between amazement and something else, perhaps wounded pride. "Where'd you learn to do that?" "My father believed in useful education." Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron. "He used to say ornamental knowledge was for people who could afford ornamental lives." A smile tugged at Jacob's mouth before he caught himself. "Well, thank you. I told you I'd earn my keep." She looked around the ranch in the growing daylight. The main house was solid but needed work-loose shingles, a sagging porch rail. The barn looked better maintained, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance. "What else needs doing?" "Miss Hart, you're a guest." "I'm a temporary employee," she corrected. "And I suspect you have more work than hands. Where's Lily?"
"Feeding the chickens. She's been up since dawn, excited as Christmas morning."
Indeed, Lily appeared around the corner of the barn, egg basket in hand and a smile bright enough to light the territory. "Miss Evelyn, did you fix the pump? Papa's been fighting it for weeks." "Miss Hart fixed it," Jacob said, emphasizing the formal name. "And now she should have some breakfast." "I'll cook," Evelyn offered, "unless you'd prefer." "Papa can't cook," Lily announced cheerfully. "He burns everything except coffee, and his coffee tastes like mud." Lily Reed. "It's true, Papa. Even Reverend Grant said so." Evelyn hid her smile. "Then perhaps I'd better take charge of the kitchen." The kitchen was clean but sparse, with that particular emptiness that spoke of a woman's absence. Evelyn found flour, salt pork, and dried beans in the pantry, along with precious little else. She set about making biscuits and gravy while Lily chattered beside her, supposedly helping but mostly talking. And then the rooster chased Tommy Henderson clear across the yard, and he had to climb the apple tree to get away. And Mrs. Henderson said it served him right for pulling Mary's pigtails. And, oh, Lily paused for breath, "You sing while you cook, just like Mama used to." Evelyn hadn't realized she'd been humming. "Does it bother you?" "No," Lily said softly. "It's nice. The house has been too quiet." Over breakfast, Jacob outlined the ranch's needs with the same careful detail he might use for a business transaction. Water rights disputes with Turner, fences that needed mending before winter, cattle that should be moved to lower pastures. He spoke like a man presenting facts to a stranger, which Evelyn supposed she was. "I can help with the fences," she said. "And I noticed your saddles need mending. I'm handy with leather work." Jacob's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Most ladies wouldn't—" "I'm not most ladies. Mr. Reed. I thought we'd established that." Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement, perhaps, that they were both people whom life had pushed outside conventional boundaries. The moment broke when Lily asked, "Can Miss Evelyn teach me to read better? Papa tries, but he doesn't know all the big words." "I know plenty of words," Jacob protested. "Not the ones in Mama's books, the poetry ones." A shadow crossed Jacob's face. "Those books are put away." "But—" "Lily!" His tone brooked no argument. The child subsided, but Evelyn saw the disappointment in her eyes. She made a mental note to ask about it later, when Jacob wasn't around to shut down the conversation. After breakfast, true to her word, Evelyn tackled the pile of leather goods that needed repair. The work was soothing, familiar. Her fingers remembered the motions from years of helping her father. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice Jacob watching from the doorway until Lily's voice startled them both. "Papa, you're staring." Jacob colored and turned away. "Just surprised is all. Don't know many women who can work leather like that." "My mother could," Evelyn said quietly. "She could do anything sew, cook, doctor animals, even help birth babies. She used to say a woman needs to be twice as capable as a man just to be thought half as useful." "Smart woman?" "She was." Evelyn focused on the strap she was mending. "She died last year. Fever took her." "I'm sorry." The simple words, spoken with genuine understanding, nearly undid her. She'd heard so many empty condolences back east, but Jacob Reed knew about loss. It colored his voice like smoke. "Mama died 3 winters ago," Lily said matter-of-factly. "In the big snow, she went to help Mrs. Olson with her baby and got caught in the blizzard." "Oh, Lily," Jacob warned. "It's all right," Evelyn said. "Death is part of life out here. Isn't it no use pretending otherwise?" That afternoon, the promised storm rolled in. Evelyn had seen storms back east, but nothing like this western tempest. The sky turned the color of old pewter, and the wind howled like a living thing. Lightning split the heavens while thunder shook the earth. "The cattle," Jacob said, grabbing his coat. "There's a box canyon to the north where they sometimes shelter, but if they're caught in the open—" "I'll help," Evelyn said. "No, it's too dangerous." "Mr. Reed, I can ride, and you need every hand, unless you'd prefer to lose cattle for the sake of propriety." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Lily, you stay in the house. Lock the doors." "But, Papa—" "Mind me, Lily, this once. Just mind me without arguing." They saddled 2 horses quickly. Evelyn grateful for her split riding skirt, another practical choice that had scandalized her Philadelphia neighbors. The moment they left the shelter of the barn, the wind tried to tear them from their saddles. Jacob led the way, his body bent low over his horse's neck. Evelyn followed, trusting his knowledge of the land. Rain came in sheets, turning the ground to mud. Lightning illuminated the landscape in stark, terrifying flashes. They found the cattle huddled in a draw, frightened and bawling. Half were missing, probably scattered across the range. But in the box canyon, pressed against the rocks, were the pregnant cows and young calves Jacob had moved there earlier. "Thank God," he breathed. Then, louder, "We need to check they're all accounted for." They worked together, driving stragglers into the shelter of the canyon. Evelyn's horse shied at a lightning strike, nearly throwing her, but she held on. Her hands were numb, her clothes soaked through, but she kept riding. "There," Jacob pointed to a calf caught in a tangle of brush, its mother lowing frantically nearby. Evelyn reached it first, dismounting to free the terrified animal. The thorns tore at her hands, but she worked steadily, speaking soft nonsense to calm the calf. Jacob appeared beside her, and together they freed the animal, sending it running to its mother. "Your hands," he said, catching her wrists. Blood seeped from multiple scratches. "They'll mend," she said, but she didn't pull away. His hands were warm despite the cold rain. gentle as he examined the wounds. Lightning flashed again, illuminating his face. She saw concern there, and something else, a recognition, perhaps that she was not what he'd expected. "We should get back," he said roughly, releasing her hands. The ride back was treacherous, the storm increasing in fury. By the time they reached the barn, both were shivering. They unsaddled the horses quickly, Evelyn's fingers clumsy with cold. "Get inside," Jacob ordered. "Get warm." But in the house, they found Lily had not been idle. A fire roared in the hearth, and she'd laid out towels and dry clothes, some of Jacob's, for him, and a dress Evelyn recognized as too fine for everyday wear. "That was Mama's," Lily said quietly.
I thought, is it all right?
Evelyn looked at Jacob, who stood frozen in the doorway.
I can't,
she began. "Wear it," he said roughly. "Sarah would have—" She was practical. No sense in good clothes going to waste. Evelyn changed in Lily's room, her hands shaking as she buttoned the blue wool dress. It fit well enough, though she was taller than Sarah Reed had been. When she emerged, she found Jacob had also changed and was tending the fire while Lily heated soup on the stove.
"You look pretty,"
Lily said.
"Doesn't she, Papa?"
Jacob glanced up, and their eyes met across the room. "Yes," he said quietly. "She does." They ate soup in companionable silence, the storm raging outside making the kitchen seem even cozier. When thunder crashed particularly loud, Lily scooted closer to Evelyn on the bench.
"Sing something,"
the child requested.
"Please, to cover the scary sounds."
Evelyn looked at Jacob, who nodded slightly. So she sang old hymns her mother had taught her, songs from her childhood. Her voice was nothing special, but it filled the kitchen with warmth. Lily leaned against her side, and even Jacob seemed to relax, his shoulders losing their perpetual tension. When bedtime came, Lily hugged Evelyn tight.
"I'm glad you got off at the wrong station,"
she whispered. Alone with Jacob by the dying fire, Evelyn became aware of the impropriety of their situation. She was wearing his dead wife's clothes, sitting in his kitchen, having ridden out into a storm beside him like a partner. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For today, not many women would have—"
"Mr. Reed,"
she interrupted gently.
"Perhaps we should stop comparing me to most women. I think we've established I don't fit that mold."
He smiled then, a real smile that did indeed make his eyes crinkle as Lily had described. "No, Miss Hart, you certainly don't." And later, in Sarah Reed's sewing room that was now her temporary bedroom, Evelyn sat by the window watching the storm pass. She thought about Silas Boone waiting in Silver Butte, about the contract she'd signed, about the expectations she'd traveled west to meet. Then she thought about a little girl who prayed for a mother and a man who fought the land and loneliness with equal determination.
3 days,
she reminded herself.
Just 3 days.
But as she prepared for bed, still wearing Sarah Reed's dress, she wondered if 3 days would be enough or far too long. Outside, the storm finally began to ease, leaving the land washed clean and ready for whatever morning would bring. And somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, wild and free as the territory itself. The wolves came with the first frost. Evelyn heard them just after midnight, a long, mournful howl that raised the hair on her neck. She sat up in bed, listening to the answering calls echoing across the valley.
"Down the hall."
She heard Jacob's door open, his footsteps quick on the floorboards. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stepped into the hallway. "Wolves?" she asked quietly. He nodded, his face grim in the lamplight. "They're early this year. Must be a hard winter coming." He paused, seeming to realize they were both in their night clothes. "You should go back to bed." Papa Lily appeared in her doorway, clutching her rag doll. "Are they going to eat our cattle?"
"Not if I can help it."
Jacob reached for his coat. "I'll stand to watch. In this cold, you'll freeze." Evelyn made a decision. I'll help. We can take turns.
And Miss Hart?
Mr. Reed. We've established that I'm capable, and 2 sets of eyes are better than 1. They dressed quickly and quietly. Jacob handed Evelyn a rifle. Studying her face,
You know how to use this?
my father believed in being prepared. She checked the chamber with practiced ease. Though I've only shot at targets and the occasional rat.
Wolves are bigger than rats,
Lily said solemnly from the kitchen doorway.
Lily Reed, you get back to bed this instant,
Jacob ordered.
But Papa.
No arguments. Lock your door and stay inside. Outside, the night was crisp and clear. Stars scattered like spilled salt across the sky. Their breath came in white puffs as they positioned themselves on the porch, watching the darkness beyond the cattle pen.
There,
Evelyn whispered, pointing to shadows moving along the ridge.
4, maybe 5. Good eyes.
Jacob shifted his rifle.
They're testing, seeing how close they can get.
They waited in tense silence. Then one wolf, bolder than the rest, slunk toward the pen. Jacob fired a warning shot over its head. The wolf retreated, but not far. They're hungry, he said.
Desperate. Normal wolves would have spooked at the shot.
For the next hour, they took turns firing warning shots and ringing the dinner bell to keep the pack at bay. The wolves circled, patient and persistent, their eyes gleaming in the darkness.
My mother used to tell stories about wolves,
Evelyn said during a lull.
In the old country, they said wolves were cursed men, transformed for their sins.
No curse needed, Jacob replied. Just hunger, same as the rest of us. A wolf howled, closer now, and was answered by another. Evelyn gripped her rifle tighter. Miss Hart, Jacob said suddenly, I owe you an apology.
For what? I misjudged you. Thought you were...
He paused, searching for words.
I thought you were like the ladies in town who look at Lily and me with pity, who offer help but really just want gossip to share over tea.
And now I think you're someone who fixes water pumps and faces down wolves without flinching. His voice held a note of wonder. Don't know what to make of that. Before Evelyn could respond, the wolves made their move. 3 charged the pen simultaneously while 2 others circled wide, trying to panic the cattle. Jacob and Evelyn fired in quick succession, not aiming to kill, but to frighten. The dinner bell clanged as Evelyn rang it with one hand while reloading with the other. The torches, Jacob shouted. In the barn. Evelyn ran for them while Jacob held the line. She found the pitch-soaked torches and flint, her hands steady despite the danger. Soon she had 2 blazing brands. Together they advanced on the wolves, fire in one hand, rifles in the other. The combination of flame and noise finally broke the pack's nerve. They retreated into the darkness, their howls fading into the distance. They'll be back, Jacob said, watching the ridge.
Then we'll be ready.
Evelyn extinguished one torch but kept the other burning.
Should we stay out here?
For a while longer, until we're sure. They sat on the porch steps, the torch planted in the ground beside them. The adrenaline was fading, leaving Evelyn aware of how close they were sitting, shoulders almost touching. Lily was right, Jacob said suddenly. About me being sad, about wanting... He stopped, jaw tightening. It doesn't matter. Mr. Reed Jacob. It was the first time she'd used his given name, and they both noticed. Your daughter wrote that letter because she loves you, because she wants you to be happy. Happy. He said the word like it was foreign. I was happy once. Had everything a man could want. Then one blizzard took it all away. Not all, Evelyn said gently. You still have Lily. And I thank God for her every day. But sometimes... He scrubbed a hand over his face. Sometimes I look at her and see Sarah so strong it takes my breath away. And I know I'm failing her. Can't even keep water in the well or wolves from the door. You're not failing her. You're doing your best with what you have.
It's not enough. Turner's going to take the water rights. Without water, the ranch dies. Without the ranch... He shook his head. I'll have to send Lily to Sarah's sister in Chicago. She'll have a better life there. School, proper clothes, opportunities. But not her father. She deserves better than a broken-down rancher who can't even... He stopped abruptly. Can't even what? Can't even look at a woman without feeling like he's betraying his wife's memory. He finished quietly. Evelyn's heart twisted. I don't think Sarah would want you to stop living. You didn't know her. No, but I know she rode out in a blizzard to help deliver a baby. That tells me she valued life. Wanted to preserve it. Why would she want less for the man she loved? Jacob was quiet for so long, Evelyn thought he wouldn't answer. Then, the morning she left, we argued. Something stupid about money. I was worried about making ends meet, and she said I worried too much, that God would provide. I told her God helps those who help themselves. His voice roughened. Last words I ever said to her were spoken in anger. Without thinking, Evelyn reached out and covered his hand with hers. She knew you loved her. Did she? He turned his hand palm up, interlacing their fingers. Or did she die thinking I cared more about the ranch than our family? She died trying to help someone else. That's the legacy she left, one of compassion and courage. Lily has that same spirit. Lily has her mother's heart and her father's stubbornness. Poor child. A lucky child, Evelyn corrected. To be so loved. They sat in comfortable silence, hands still linked, watching for wolves that didn't return. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky purple and gold, a rider appeared on the horizon. Jacob stood, releasing Evelyn's hand. That's Abel Grant. Must be important to bring him out this early. The Reverend rode up, his face grave. Jacob, Miss Hart, I'm afraid I have news. Spit it out, Abel, Jacob said. Had a telegram from Silver Butte. Silas Boone is coming to Rock Creek. Today, he's demanding his bride be returned to him, threatening legal action if she's not. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Legal action? He claims you signed a contract. Says he's out considerable expense and embarrassment. Reverend Grant dismounted, pulling papers from his saddlebag. But I did some checking. Had my nephew in Cheyenne look into it. That seal Boone used, it's the old county seal. The one that was retired 2 years ago when the borders changed. Meaning, Jacob asked. Meaning any documents stamped with it are legally questionable at best. But Boone's bringing a lawyer. Could get ugly. Let him come, Jacob said flatly. Miss Hart is a free woman. She can make her own choices. That's just it, the Reverend said. Turner's been spreading talk in town. Says it's mighty convenient. A beautiful woman showing up just when you need help most. Says maybe you and Miss Hart planned this whole thing. That's ridiculous, Evelyn protested. Course it is, but Turner's got influence. If Boone shows up making accusations and Turner backs him... The Reverend shook his head. Could turn the whole town against you both. So what do you suggest? Jacob asked. I suggest Miss Hart makes her position clear. If she intends to honor the original arrangement with Boone, she should say so. If not, she needs to be prepared to stand her ground. All eyes turned to Evelyn. She thought about the letters in her carpet bag. Promises of a new life that had turned out to be lies. Thought about 3 days that had shown her more honest work and genuine care than all her months in Philadelphia society. I won't go with him, she said quietly. Contract or no contract, I won't marry a man who inspires such fear. Even if it means giving up your chance at marriage, the Reverend asked gently. Your reputation will be ruined. No decent man will... Reverend? Jacob interrupted sharply. I think Miss Hart has made her position clear. I'm just trying to help her understand the consequences. I understand perfectly. Evelyn said, I came west for a new life, but not at any cost, not if it means living in fear. The Reverend sighed. Then God help us all when Boone arrives.
He's not a man who takes disappointment well. After the Reverend left, Jacob and Evelyn stood awkwardly on the porch. The intimacy of the night seemed to evaporate in the morning light. "You should leave," Jacob said abruptly. "Take the morning stage to Laramie. Get far away before Boone arrives." "And go where with what money?" Evelyn shook her head. "I'm not running. This isn't your fight."
"Isn't it?" She met his eyes steadily. "Seems to me it became my fight the moment I chose to stay here instead of continuing to Silver Butte."
"Evelyn," he stopped, seeming surprised he'd used her given name. "I'm not some delicate flower. Jacob, I thought we'd established that. Standing up to wolves is one thing. Standing up to Silas Boone is another. The man owns judges, has the railroad in his pocket. Then we'd better make sure we're ready for him." From the house came the sound of Lily singing, her young voice bright with morning hope. Both adults turned toward the sound, and something passed between them in understanding that this was about more than contracts or convenience.
"Papa, Miss Evelyn, breakfast is ready," Lily called.
"I didn't burn anything this time." Despite everything, Jacob smiled. Miracles do happen. As they walked toward the house, Evelyn asked,
"What happened to the wolves?
"Will they come back?" "Probably. Wolves are persistent when they're hungry enough." He paused at the door. "But so are people when they're protecting something that matters." Their eyes met and held.
"Yes," Evelyn said softly. "They are."
Inside, Lily had indeed managed not to burn breakfast, though the biscuits were lopsided and the eggs a bit rubbery. She chattered happily about the excitement of the night, seemingly unaware of the larger storm approaching. But as they ate, Evelyn noticed Jacob checking his rifle, making sure it was loaded and within reach. She saw him glance out the window repeatedly, watching the road. The wolves might have retreated for now, but bigger predators were coming. And this time, it would take more than torches and warning shots to drive them away.
"Miss Evelyn,"
Lily asked suddenly,
"are you scared?"
Evelyn considered lying, then decided the child deserved honesty. "A little, but being scared doesn't mean we give up. Papa says courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing what's right anyway. Your papa is a wise man." Jacob looked up from his plate, and for a moment, she saw past his defensive walls to the man underneath, wounded but not broken, wary but not unkind. "We'll face whatever comes," he said quietly. "Together." It wasn't a declaration of love or even friendship, but it was a promise. Solid as the mountains that watched over the valley. And for now, that was enough. The train whistle announced Silas Boone's arrival long before the man himself appeared at Rock Creek Station. Half the town had gathered despite the cold October wind, drawn by gossip and the promise of drama. Evelyn stood between Jacob and Reverend Grant, her chin raised despite the knots in her stomach. "Remember," the Reverend murmured. "Stay calm. Don't let him provoke you." Evelyn nodded, her hand instinctively reaching for her mother's silver hairpin. Lily pressed close to her other side, small fingers gripping her skirt. The train wheezed to a stop, black smoke billowing into the gray sky. Silas Boone emerged first, a large man in an expensive coat, with cold eyes and a mouth used to sneering. Behind him came a thin man carrying a leather case, the promised lawyer. Boone's gaze swept the crowd and landed on Evelyn. His eyes narrowed. "So, you're the woman who's caused me such inconvenience." "Mr. Boone." Reverend Grant stepped forward. "Perhaps we could discuss this matter privately." "No." Boone's voice carried across the platform. "This woman made a fool of me publicly. The resolution will be equally public." He gestured to his lawyer. "Mr. Hutchins, show them the contract." The lawyer produced a document with a flourish. "Miss Evelyn Hart, you signed a legally binding agreement to enter into matrimony with Mr. Silas Boone. By failing to appear as promised, you've breached said contract." "I signed an agreement based on false pretenses," Evelyn said clearly.
The letters I received weren't from Mr. Boone. The letters are immaterial, Hutchins continued smoothly. The contract stands. Does it? Reverend Grant pulled out his own papers. Because I have here documentation showing that seal on your contract is invalid. Hasn't been legal for 2 years. Boone's face darkened. Some technicality won't release her from her obligation. It's not a technicality. Jacob spoke for the first time. It's fraud. Boone turned his cold stare on Jacob. Ah, the widower. Tell me, Reed, how much did you pay her to stage this little drama convenient? Isn't it? A beautiful woman appears just when you're about to lose your ranch. Nobody paid anybody anything, Evelyn said sharply. I got off at the wrong station by mistake. Mistake, Boone laughed. An ugly sound. And I suppose it was a mistake that you've been living in this man's house playing mother to his brat. Watch your tongue, Jacob warned, stepping forward. Papa, Lily suddenly burst out. I mean, Mr. Reed. Her small voice carried clearly across the platform. It was me. I sent the letter I wanted. Her voice broke. I just wanted a mama, someone to make Papa smile again. The crowd murmured, sympathy shifting toward the little girl. Emma Hargreaves dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. You see, Evelyn addressed the crowd as much as Boone, a child's innocent wish, no conspiracy, no payment, just a mix-up that led to you making a fool of me, Boone snarled. Do you know what people are saying? That Silas Boone couldn't even keep a mail-order bride? That a woman preferred a failing rancher to me? Perhaps, a new voice said from the crowd. That says more about you than her, Boone. Levi Turner stepped forward, and Evelyn tensed. But surprisingly, the land speculator was studying Boone with calculation rather than support. Turner, Boone acknowledged. You understand business. Tell them, I understand that a man who can't keep his word isn't worth partnering with. Turner said coolly, you promised me first option on any land acquisitions near the new rail line. Instead, you've been buying parcels through shell companies. Boone's face went red. That's a separate matter. Is it? Turner smiled without warmth. Seems to me you've got a pattern of deception. Makes a man wonder what else you've lied about. This is ridiculous, Hutchins, the lawyer, interjected. The matter at hand is simple. Miss Hart signed a contract with an invalid seal, Reverend Grant reminded him. The intent was clear. The intent was based on falsified correspondence, Evelyn said. I have the letters. Would you like me to read them aloud? Show everyone what kind of man Mr. Boone pretended to be. She pulled the letters from her bag. Shall I read the part where he claims to be a gentle soul who loves children, or perhaps where he writes about respecting a wife as an equal partner? Snickers ran through the crowd. Someone who'd clearly had dealings with Boone muttered, Equal partner, my foot, man treats his horses better than his workers. Enough, Boone stepped toward Evelyn, but Jacob moved smoothly between them. Touch her and you'll regret it, Jacob said quietly. Threatening me. Read. In front of witnesses. Protecting a lady from a bully. Also in front of witnesses. Sheriff Watson, who'd been watching from the edge of the crowd, stepped forward. Seems to me this is a civil matter, not a criminal one. No law says a woman has to marry a man just because some letters got mixed up. She signed a contract, Hutchins insisted. With an invalid seal. Watson noted. Judge Morrison's in town for the quarterly session. Why don't we let him sort it out? Yes, Boone smiled coldly. Let's do that. Morrison owes me. He caught himself. Morrison is a fair man. He'll see justice done. The crowd began moving toward the town hall, which served as a courthouse when needed. Evelyn felt Jacob's hand at her elbow, steadying her. You don't have to do this, he murmured. There's still time. No. She looked down at Lily, who was trying very hard not to cry.
I'm not running. In the makeshift courtroom, Judge Morrison, a thin man with nervous eyes, listened as both sides presented their arguments. Hutchins waved the contract dramatically. Reverend Grant countered with documentation about the invalid seal. Through it all, Boone watched Evelyn with cold fury. Your Honor, Hutchins concluded, my client has suffered damages financial and to his reputation. He demands compensation. What kind of compensation? Morrison asked, though his eyes kept flicking to Boone.
The fulfillment of the original contract, marriage, as agreed.
You can't force someone to marry against their will, someone called from the gallery. Order. Morrison banged his gavel weakly.
Miss Hart, do you have anything to say?
Evelyn stood. Yes, Your Honor. I came west seeking a new life. It's true, but not at the cost of my freedom or safety. Multiple people have testified about Mr. Boone's treatment of women in his employ. I won't put myself under the power of such a man. Hearsay, Hutchins objected.
Is it? Evelyn pulled out a telegram. I received this yesterday from Miss Helen Garrett, Mr. Boone's former housekeeper. She's willing to testify about her experiences if needed.
Boone's face went purple. That lying little.
Mr. Boone,
Morrison said sharply. Control yourself. Your Honor. Jacob stood. May I speak? Morrison nodded reluctantly. This woman came to my ranch by honest mistake. She's worked hard, helped with the cattle, fixed equipment, cared for my daughter. She's proven herself to be exactly what her letters claimed, a good, honest woman seeking a respectable life. He paused. The fact that Boone sees her as property to be claimed rather than a person to be courted tells you all you need to know. Pretty words from a man who benefits from the situation. Boone snarled. Your Honor, I demand—
Mr. Boone.
A clear young voice interrupted. Lily stood on a bench so she could be seen.
My mama used to say you can tell everything about a man by how he treats animals and children. You called me a brat. You've never even met me. And you called me names. She lifted her chin, so like Evelyn in that moment that several people noticed. I don't think you'd make a very good husband.
Your Honor. Emma Hargreaves stood. If I may, this child wrote an innocent letter hoping to find her father a wife. Through no fault of hers or Miss Hart's. That letter got tangled with Mr. Boone's correspondence. To punish either of them for an honest mistake would be cruel. One by one, townspeople stood to speak. The banker mentioned Boone's aggressive business practices. The doctor's wife recalled how Boone's workers often needed treatment for injuries. Even Turner, surprisingly, noted that Boone had a reputation for breaking agreements when it suited him. Morrison looked increasingly uncomfortable.
The seal issue does complicate matters.
Your Honor, Reverend Grant said quietly, perhaps we should consider what Solomon would do. He was faced with two women claiming the same baby. His wisdom was to discern who truly cared for the child's welfare. What's your point, Reverend? My point is this: who in this room is concerned with Miss Hart's welfare? Those who want her to have the freedom to choose, or the man who sees her as property to be acquired? Boone slammed his hand on the table. Enough of this philosophical nonsense. I have a contract. With an invalid seal, Morrison said finally. Mr. Boone, while I sympathize with your inconvenience, I cannot enforce a contract executed with a fraudulent seal. Fraudulent, I'll have you know. Furthermore, Morrison continued, gaining courage from the crowd's obvious support for Evelyn. Attempting to enforce such a contract could be seen as attempted fraud yourself. I suggest you drop this matter. Boone stood slowly, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over. You've made an enemy today, all of you. I have influence. I have money. You, what? Sheriff Watson stepped forward. Make threats in a court of law. I'd think carefully about your next words. Mr. Boone. For a long moment, Boone stared at Evelyn. You'll regret this, he said softly. When your protector here loses his ranch and you're both in the street, remember you could have had everything. I'd rather have nothing with my dignity than everything without it. Evelyn replied. Boone stormed out, Hutchins scrambling after him. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Lily threw herself into Evelyn's arms, sobbing with relief. It's over, Jacob said quietly, his hand finding Evelyn's shoulder.
Is it?
She watched through the window as Boone's carriage headed toward the train station. Men like that don't give up easily. That evening, as they sat around the kitchen table, a knock came at the door. Jacob answered it warily, rifle within reach. But it was only Turner.
Reed, he nodded. Miss Hart, mind if I come in?
Jacob stepped aside reluctantly. Turner entered, hat in hand.
That was an interesting display today,
Turner said. Boone's not used to losing.
What do you want?
Turner, Jacob asked bluntly. To make you an offer, a fair one this time. Turner pulled out papers. I'll buy your water rights for twice what they're worth. You could take the money, start fresh somewhere else. Maybe California. I hear it's nice there. This is our home, Jacob said.
For how long? Turner's voice was almost gentle. The drought's not ending.
The railroad's coming through whether you like it or not. At least this way.
You walk away with something.
No.
Think about your daughter, Reed. What kind of life is she going to have here? No mother, no money, no future.
She has me, Jacob said firmly, and that's enough. Turner looked at Evelyn. And you, Miss Hart, you could have married Boone, had wealth and security. Instead, you've chosen, what, a few days' shelter with a failing rancher.
I've chosen freedom, Evelyn said simply, the right to make my own decisions.
Turner studied them both, then, surprisingly, smiled. You know what I believe you have? He put his papers away. The offer stands. Reed. When you're ready to be practical, you know where to find me. After he left, the three of them sat in silence. Finally, Lily asked,
Are we going to lose the ranch, Papa?
Jacob pulled her close.
Not if I can help it, sweetheart. Miss Evelyn,
Lily said quietly.
You're still leaving on Thursday, aren't you?
Evelyn looked at Jacob, then at the little girl who'd somehow wormed her way into her heart.
I suppose I should. But where will you go?
Lily asked. You can't go to Mr. Boone now. No, Evelyn agreed. I can't.
Then stay,
Lily said simply. Please, just a little longer. Lily, Jacob warned, but his heart wasn't in it. Evelyn fingered her mother's hairpin, thinking of all the plans she'd made, all the expectations she'd carried west. None of them had included a struggling rancher and his determined daughter. None of them had included standing up in court and declaring her independence. But then, the best things in life rarely went according to plan. I suppose, she said slowly,
I could stay a bit longer, if your father agrees, just until I figure out what comes next.
Of course, Jacob said quickly. Too quickly. I mean, we could use the help, and it would be wrong to send you off with nowhere to go. They were very careful not to look at each other, very careful to keep their voices practical. But Lily smiled like the sun coming out after rain. Later that night, unable to sleep, Evelyn found Jacob on the porch, staring at the stars. Can't sleep either, he asked without turning.
Too much to think about.
She sat beside him, careful to leave space between them.
Do you think Boone will really cause trouble?
Probably. Men like him don't forget slights. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry you got caught up in all this.
I'm not.
The words surprised her, but they were true.
For the first time in my life, I stood up and said what I wanted,
or rather, what I didn't want.
That's worth something.
It is, he agreed. But it might cost you. Everything worth having costs something. They sat in comfortable silence, the night wrapping around them like a blanket. In the distance, a coyote called, and another answered. "The wolves will be back," Jacob said suddenly. "And Boone and Turner, the drought won't end just because we wish it. There's hard times ahead." "I know. So why stay even for a little longer? You could go to Cheyenne, find work there, start fresh where nobody knows about today." Evelyn considered the question. "Your daughter asked me to," she said finally, "and I find I don't want to disappoint her." "Is that the only reason?" She turned to look at him. This man who'd lost so much but kept fighting, who protected what was his without being cruel about it. "No," she said softly. "It's not the only reason." Something shifted between them, subtle as starlight but just as real. Not a promise, not yet, but a possibility. "We should go in," Jacob said finally. "Long day tomorrow." "Yes," Evelyn agreed, but neither of them moved. Above them, the stars wheeled in their endless dance, indifferent to human struggles and hopes. But sometimes, Evelyn thought, that indifference was a kind of blessing. The stars didn't care about contracts or conventions. They just shone, constant and true, lighting the way for anyone brave enough to look up. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, sitting beside a man who'd shown her kindness without asking anything in return, watching over a ranch that might not survive the winter, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt since her mother died. She felt like she was home. The smell of smoke woke Evelyn just after midnight. For a confused moment, she thought it was the wood stove, but the acrid scent was wrong sharper, mixed with hay and tar. She flew from bed, not bothering with a wrapper, and ran to the window. Orange flames danced against the night sky. The hay barn was burning. "Fire!" she shouted, racing down the hall. "Jacob, fire!" He was already up, yanking on boots, his face grim in the flickering light from the window. "Get Lily! Get her outside! Away from the buildings!" "What about—" "Go!" He grabbed the water buckets from the kitchen. "Now." Evelyn burst into Lily's room, scooping the sleepy child into her arms. "We have to go outside, sweetheart." "What's wrong?" Lily mumbled. Then her eyes widened as she saw the orange glow. "Papa! He's fighting the fire. Come on." Evelyn carried her out the front door, away from the conflagration. "Stay here, right here. Don't move." "Miss Evelyn." "Promise me—" "I promise," Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face. Evelyn ran back toward the barn. Jacob was already there, throwing buckets of water that seemed pathetically small against the roaring flames. The horses in the nearby stable were screaming, panicked by the smoke. "The animals!" Jacob shouted over the roar. "Gotta get them out!" Without hesitation, Evelyn ran into the stable. The smoke was thicker here, stinging her eyes and throat. The horses were rearing, terrified. She grabbed a blanket, throwing it over the first horse's head to blind it temporarily, then let it out. Again and again she returned, Jacob working beside her, until all 6 horses were safe in the far pasture. "The water barrels!" Jacob gasped. "Behind the house!" They formed a desperate bucket brigade of 2, running back and forth, throwing water on the barn and, more importantly, on the house and stable roofs to keep the fire from spreading. Evelyn's arms ached, her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. "It's no use," Jacob finally said, sagging against the well. "The barn's gone." Indeed, the structure was fully engulfed now, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky. But the house and stable were safe, their roofs wet enough to resist the floating embers. "Papa!" Lily ran to them, throwing her arms around Jacob's waist. "Are you hurt?" "No, sweetheart. We're all right." He held her close, his eyes meeting Evelyn's over his daughter's head. "Thanks to Miss Evelyn." "How did it start?" Evelyn asked, though she suspected she knew. Jacob's jaw tightened. He pointed to tracks in the dust horseshoe prints leading away from the barn. "We had visitors. Boone. Or his men.
Jacob examined the tracks more closely. 3 riders, maybe 4. See this print shoe's got a crack in it? I'll remember that.
We should tell the sheriff.
Evelyn said,
Tell him what? That we suspect Boone but can't prove it. Jacob shook his head. Watson's a good man, but he won't move against Boone without evidence. Then we get evidence.
Miss Evelyn,
Lily said in a small voice.
Why would someone burn our barn? Evelyn knelt beside her.
Sometimes people do bad things when they're angry, sweetheart.
But we're all safe, and that's what matters.
But all the hay for the cattle, what will they eat this winter?
The reality of their loss hit Evelyn like a physical blow. Without hay, the cattle would starve. Without cattle, the ranch would fail. It was a death sentence carried out in flame.
We'll figure something out, Jacob said,
but his voice lacked conviction.
As dawn broke, revealing the smoking ruins of the barn, neighbors began arriving. Word spread fast in the valley. Emma Hargreaves brought blankets and hot coffee. Reverend Grant offered prayers and practical help. Even some who'd been cool toward them after the confrontation with Boone came to help.
Terrible thing, Tom Henderson said, surveying the damage. You figure it was an accident?
No,
Jacob said flatly.
It wasn't.
Henderson nodded slowly. Boone's staying at the Grand Hotel in town. Him and some hired men arrived yesterday afternoon. You see anything else? Evelyn asked.
Well, Henderson hesitated. My boy Tommy was out late fishing. Said he saw riders heading this way around 10 o'clock. Didn't think nothing of it at the time.
Would Tommy recognize any of them?
Maybe.
One had a funny way of sitting his horse, all twisted like. Tommy noticed 'cause he thought the man must have a bad back. Jacob filed that information away.
Thanks, Tom.
As the morning wore on, more neighbors arrived to help clear the debris, but Evelyn noticed the worried looks they exchanged. Everyone knew what the loss of the barn meant. Around noon, Sheriff Watson rode up. Heard you had some trouble?
You could say that.
Jacob showed him the tracks. Started around midnight, 3 or 4 riders. Watson studied the prints, especially the one with the cracked shoe.
I'll ask around town, see if anyone noticed anything.
Sheriff, Evelyn said, Mr. Boone threatened us yesterday, in front of witnesses. Threats and arson are 2 different things. Miss Hart, unless you saw him here—
We didn't see anyone. They made sure of that. Watson sighed. I know what you're thinking. Probably even right. But thinking and proving are different beasts. He mounted his horse. I'll do what I can, but Boone's got deep pockets and good lawyers.
After he left, Jacob stood staring at the ruins. He's right. Boone will have alibis. His men will swear he was playing cards at the hotel all night. So he gets away with it.
Men like Boone usually do. Jacob's voice was bitter. Money talks louder than justice out here.
Papa, Lily tugged on his sleeve. We're not giving up, are we? Mama wouldn't give up. Jacob's face softened.
No, sweetheart, we're not giving up.
That afternoon, Evelyn had an idea.
I need to go to town. What for? Jacob asked.
Trust me. She saddled one of the horses. I'll be back before dark. In town, she went straight to Emma Hargreaves' store. The older woman looked up from her ledgers. Miss Hart, how are you holding up terrible thing about the fire? Mrs. Hargreaves, Evelyn said. You know everything that happens in this town. Emma preened slightly. I do keep informed. The men who work for Boone, do any of them have injuries? Bad backs, limps, anything that would affect how they ride. Emma's eyes sharpened. Now that you mention it, there's a fellow named Crocker. Got kicked by a horse last year. Walks all hunched over now. Rides the same way. She leaned closer. Why do you ask? Just curious. Evelyn browsed the shelves casually. Does this Crocker drink? Like a fish, usually at Murphy's Saloon.
Emma studied her shrewdly. You're not thinking of doing something foolish, are you? Of course not, Evelyn lied smoothly.
I just like to know who's who.
Her next stop was the telegraph office. She sent 2 wires, one to Helen Garrett, Boone's former housekeeper, and another to a friend in Philadelphia who worked for a newspaper. Then she went to Murphy's saloon. The bartender looked scandalized when she walked in. Miss, this ain't no place for I'm looking for Mr. Crocker, she said calmly.
Is he here?
A twisted man at the bar turned. Who's asking? Evelyn studied him the way he hunched, favoring his left side. The smell of smoke still clung to his clothes. And his boots, she glimpsed the horseshoe nails. One shoe would have a crack. She'd bet her life on it. Just wanted to thank you, she said sweetly. For what? Crocker's eyes narrowed suspiciously. For the warm welcome to the territory. Though next time, you might want to change clothes before coming to town. You smell like a bonfire. Crocker lurched to his feet. You accusing me of something? Not at all. Just making an observation. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Crocker, you might want to get that cracked horseshoe fixed. Leaves a very distinctive print. She left before he could respond, heart pounding. Outside, she nearly ran into Turner. Miss Hart. He tipped his hat. Heard about your trouble. Our trouble, she corrected. Yes, well, Turner fell into step beside her. I also heard about your visit to the saloon. Bold move. Sometimes boldness is necessary. Sometimes it's dangerous. Turner's voice was thoughtful. Boone doesn't like being challenged, especially by women. Then he'll have to get used to disappointment. Turner chuckled. You know, I'm starting to see what Reed sees in you. He stopped walking. A word of advice. I'm listening. Boone's planning something bigger than burning barns. He's been asking about mineral rights, water tables, survey maps, the kind of questions a man asks when he's planning to take over. Why are you telling me this? Turner shrugged. Maybe I don't like his methods. Maybe I prefer honest competition. Or maybe, he smiled slightly, maybe I admire courage, even when it's foolish. When Evelyn returned to the ranch, she found Jacob and several neighbors building a temporary shelter for hay. Won't replace the barn, Tom Henderson was saying, but it'll keep some feed dry. Where did all this lumber come from? Evelyn asked. Folks donated what they could. Reverend Grant said, Christian charity. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. Despite the danger of associating with them, people were helping. That night, as they sat down to a late supper, a knock came at the door. Jacob answered it carefully, rifle in hand. Sheriff Watson stood there with Crocker, whose hands were bound. Found this fellow trying to leave town in a hurry, Watson said. Thought you might want to see his horse's shoes. Jacob examined Crocker's mount. Sure enough, the left rear shoe had a distinctive crack. That's the print, he said quietly. That's our arsonist. I didn't do nothing, Crocker protested. I was playing cards. With who? Watson asked mildly. Because I checked at the hotel. Boone was there. All right. But his men, nobody saw them after 10 o'clock. Crocker's face went pale. I want a lawyer. You'll get one, Watson assured him, after you spend some time thinking about whether Boone's money is worth a noose. Arson's a hanging offense when people could have died. After they left, Jacob looked at Evelyn with something like awe. How did you know? She told him about the twisted rider, the distinctive print, her gamble at the saloon. I couldn't let them get away with it. You took a terrible risk. We all did, fighting that fire. That's different. Is it? She met his gaze steadily. We're in this together, aren't we? Before he could answer, Lily appeared in her nightgown. Is the bad man going to jail? Yes, sweetheart, Jacob assured her. Good. Lily climbed into Evelyn's lap. Miss Evelyn, you're brave. Like a hero in Papa's books.
Your Papa's the hero,
Evelyn said, smoothing the child's hair.
I just asked a few questions.
Don't listen to her, Lily, Jacob said softly.
She's a hero too.
Their eyes met over Lily's head, and something warm passed between them. Not quite a declaration, but close. Later, after Lily was in bed, they stood on the porch looking at the stars and the dark space where the barn had been. Crocker might talk. Evelyn said, implicate Boone, or he might keep quiet and take the fall alone. Jacob sighed. Either way, Boone will retaliate. Then we'll be ready. He turned to her. Evelyn, you don't have to stay. This isn't your fight.
Isn't it?
She fingered her mother's hairpin. I made it my fight when I stood up in that courtroom, when I helped save your horses. She stopped, suddenly shy. When you what?
When I started caring what happens to this place, to Lily.
She took a breath.
To you.
Jacob moved closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. Evelyn.
I know,
she whispered.
It's too soon, too complicated, but...
He kissed her, soft and sweet under the vast Wyoming sky. When they parted, both were breathless.
Stay,
he said simply.
Not for 3 days or 3 weeks. Stay.
Jacob. I know I don't have much to offer. A failing ranch, a dangerous enemy, a ready-made family, but... She pressed her fingers to his lips.
You have everything I want, a home, a purpose, a chance to belong.
He caught her hand, pressing it to his heart.
Then belong here, with us.
Before she could answer, Lily's voice drifted through the window.
Thank you, God, for sending Miss Evelyn, and please make her stay forever.
Amen. They both smiled, tears and laughter mixing in the darkness.
How can I refuse that?
Evelyn whispered. You can't, Jacob agreed, pulling her close.
Neither can I.
They stood together, watching the stars wheel overhead, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, but certain they would face it together. The barn was gone, but what was building between them was stronger than any structure. And somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled lonely and fierce and free. But for once, the sound didn't seem threatening. It seemed like a promise that even in this hard land, wild things could survive and even thrive. All it took was courage, determination, and the willingness to fight for what mattered most. The courthouse in Rock Creek had never seen such a crowd. Every bench was filled, people standing along the walls and spilling out onto the porch. The quarterly session with Judge Morrison presiding had turned into the event of the year, all because Crocker had finally talked. Evelyn sat in the front row beside Jacob, Lily between them clutching both their hands. Across the aisle, Silas Boone lounged with studied indifference, his new lawyer, a sharp-dressed man from Denver, whispering in his ear. All rise, Sheriff Watson called. The territorial court is now in session. Judge Morrison, looking far more confident than he had during the contract dispute, took his seat. We're here to address charges of arson against Mr. William Crocker and conspiracy charges against Mr. Silas Boone. How does the defendant Crocker plead? Crocker, pale and shaking, stood.
Guilty, Your Honor, but I weren't alone in it. I was paid.
You'll have your chance to testify, Morrison said. Mr. Boone, how do you plead to conspiracy charges? Not guilty. Boone's lawyer answered smoothly. This is clearly a case of a desperate man trying to reduce his sentence by implicating my client. The trial began with Sheriff Watson presenting evidence the horseshoe prints, witness testimonies about the riders, the timing after Boone's threats. Then Crocker took the stand. Tell us what happened, the territorial prosecutor urged. Crocker's Adam's apple bobbed. Mister, Boone came to us, me and 2 others at the hotel. Said he wanted to send a message. Burn the barn. Make it look like an accident. Liar, Boone erupted. Order, Morrison banged his gavel. Continue, Mr. Crocker.
He paid us $50 each. Said if the whole place burned down, there'd be a bonus. But we stopped the fire from spreading, Jacob muttered. The prosecutor continued. Did Mr. Boone give you direct orders? He said make it look natural. Said if anyone asked, he was playing cards all night and we was with him. Boone's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Mr. Crocker, isn't it true you've been convicted of theft before? Yes, sir. And assault. That were a long time ago. So you're a man of questionable character, willing to say anything to avoid the noose. I'm telling the truth. Or are you telling a story fed to you by those who want to see Mr. Boone brought low? The lawyer gestured toward Evelyn and Jacob. Perhaps they offered you something. Nobody offered me nothing except a rope if I didn't tell the truth. The questioning continued, but Evelyn could see doubt creeping into some faces. Crocker was not a sympathetic witness. Then Helen Garrett took the stand. The former housekeeper had arrived on the morning train. A small, nervous woman with steady eyes. Miss Garrett, the prosecutor began. You worked for Mr. Boone. 6 months, sir. Until I couldn't stand it no more. Can you elaborate? Helen's hands twisted in her lap. He's got a temper. When things don't go his way, dishes got thrown, furniture broken, and if you were in the way, he struck you. More than once. Other girls too. That's why he can't keep help. Objection! Boone's lawyer shouted. Irrelevant to the charges. Goes to character, Your Honor. The prosecutor argued. I'll allow it. Morrison decided. The testimony continued, painting a picture of a violent, vindictive man. But Evelyn could see it might not be enough. Boone's lawyer was too skilled, casting doubt on every witness. Then Turner took the stand. State your name and occupation. The prosecutor instructed. Levi Turner, land speculator and investor. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Why was Turner testifying for the prosecution? Mr. Turner, do you know the defendant? I do. We've had business dealings. Were you aware of any plans regarding the Reed Ranch? Turner was quiet for a moment. Then Boone approached me about a partnership. Said if Reed's ranch failed, we could buy it cheap, control the water rights for the whole valley. And did you agree? I considered it, but then he started talking about ways to encourage failure. I don't do business that way. What kind of encouragement? First it was legal pressure, then talk of damaging property, scaring off cattle. When I objected, he said I was going soft. Boone's face was purple with rage. You backstabbing. Mr. Boone, Morrison warned. One more outburst and you'll be removed. Turner continued. The night of the fire, Boone tried to recruit me again. Said he was handling the Reed problem permanently. I declined and went home, but I know he left the hotel around 10 with several men. The courtroom erupted. This was the first direct testimony linking Boone to the crime. Why should we believe you? Boone's lawyer demanded on cross-examination. You're a competitor. Eliminating Mr. Boone would benefit you. Maybe. Turner agreed. But I prefer to win fairly. Ask anyone I drive hard bargains. But I honor them. Boone. He looked directly at the defendant. Boone honors nothing but his own greed. More witnesses followed. Tommy Henderson, nervous but determined, identified Crocker as one of the riders. The hotel clerk admitted that while Boone had been visible early in the evening, he couldn't swear to seeing him after 10. Finally, Evelyn was called to testify about the confrontation at the train station, Boone's threats, finding the fire. Miss Hart, Boone's lawyer said on cross-examination. Isn't it true you've been living at the Reed Ranch? I've been working there in exchange for room and board. Just working, nothing more. Intimate. Objection, the prosecutor called.
Goes to bias, Your Honor, the lawyer argued. Morrison frowned. Tread carefully, Counselor. Miss Hart, are you romantically involved with Jacob Reed? Evelyn lifted her chin. My feelings for Mr. Reed have no bearing on the fact that someone burned his barn, but they might bearing on your willingness to see my client blamed for it. I saw the flames. I fought the fire. I found the tracks. My feelings didn't create those facts. But perhaps they colored your interpretation. Sir, Evelyn interrupted. I came west seeking a new life. What I found was a good man struggling to save his ranch and raise his daughter. If helping them makes me biased, then yes, I am. But that doesn't change the truth of what happened. The lawyer seemed taken aback by her directness. No further questions. Jacob testified last, his voice steady as he detailed the damage, the threats to his livelihood, his certainty about the tracks. Mr. Reed, Boone's lawyer said, you're facing bankruptcy, aren't you? Times are hard. So hard that perhaps burning your own barn for insurance money might seem attractive. Gasps ran through the room. Jacob's face darkened. I wasn't insured. Couldn't afford it. That barn and its contents represented everything I had for winter feed. Why would I destroy that? Perhaps you miscalculated. I've miscalculated plenty in my life, Jacob said quietly. But I've never destroyed my own property or blamed another man for my troubles. That barn was built by my father's hands. Every board had history. You think I'd burn that for money that doesn't exist? His simple dignity was more effective than any impassioned denial. The lawyer retreated. In closing arguments, both sides made their cases. The prosecutor focused on the evidence, the pattern of behavior, the testimonies. Boone's lawyer attacked the credibility of witnesses, suggested alternative theories, emphasized reasonable doubt. Judge Morrison retired to consider. The crowd waited, tense and expectant. Lily had fallen asleep against Evelyn's shoulder, worn out by the long day. She trusts you completely, Jacob murmured. Children are good judges of character, Evelyn replied softly. So are fathers. His hand found hers. Whatever happens, the court has reached a verdict, Sheriff Watson announced. Morrison returned, his face grave. On the charge of arson, I find William Crocker guilty as confessed, sentencing to be determined. He paused. On the charge of conspiracy to commit arson, I find insufficient evidence to convict Silas Boone. The crowd erupted, some in protest, others in triumph. Boone smirked, shaking his lawyer's hand. However, Morrison continued, raising his voice, this court finds Mr. Boone's behavior throughout these proceedings troubling. Any further harassment of the Reed family or Miss Hart will be met with the full force of the law. Is that understood? Crystal clear, Your Honor, Boone said, but his eyes promised retribution. As people filed out, Evelyn felt the weight of disappointment. He's getting away with it. The law has its limits, Reverend Grant said, joining them. But justice has a way of finding its own level. Outside, rain had begun to fall, the first real rain in months. People stood in the street, faces turned skyward, laughing and crying at once. Look, Papa! Lily, now awake, held out her hands to catch the drops. The drought's breaking. Indeed, the rain came steadily, soaking the thirsty ground. If it continued, the wells would refill, the grass would grow, the ranch might survive after all. Miss Evelyn. Turner approached, water dripping from his hat. A word. Jacob tensed, but Evelyn touched his arm. What is it, Mr. Turner? Boone's leaving on the evening train. His business interests here are concluded. Turner smiled thinly. Seems several of his investors heard about the trial and pulled out. Without their backing, he can't afford to stay. How convenient, Jacob said dryly. Isn't it? Turner tipped his hat. Good day to you all. Enjoy the rain." As Turner walked away, Sheriff Watson approached. "Boone's lawyer is demanding Crocker's immediate transfer to the territorial prison. Wants him away from here before he can testify to anything else."
But what about the bonus Boone promised for burning the house? Evelyn asked.
"Can't prosecute what didn't happen." Watson spat in the mud. "But I'll be watching. Boone steps 1 foot wrong, I'll have him." That evening, the Reed Ranch felt different. The rain drummed on the roof, filling the cisterns, running in streams across the yard. Inside, they gathered around the fire, Jacob, Evelyn, and Lily, like a real family. "Will Mr. Boone come back?" Lily asked. "I don't think so," Jacob said. "Men like him prefer easier targets." "Good." Lily snuggled between them on the sofa.
"I didn't like how he looked at Miss Evelyn."
"Neither did I," Jacob admitted. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jacob answered cautiously, but it was Reverend Grant with several townspeople behind him. "Sorry to intrude," the Reverend said, "but we've been talking. What happened to you could happen to any of us. We want to help." Tom Henderson stepped forward. "I've got extra hay from my south field. You're welcome to it." "I can spare some too," another rancher added. One by one, neighbors offered what they could hay. Labor, even a few cattle to help rebuild the herd. Evelyn felt tears running down her face as the community that had once whispered about her now rallied around them. "Why?" Jacob asked, seeming stunned. Emma Hargreaves pushed to the front. "Because you stood up to Boone. Because Miss Hart showed us what courage looks like. And because—" she softened. "Because we should have been better neighbors all along." The impromptu gathering turned into a celebration. Someone brought out a fiddle, and despite the crowded space, people began to dance. Lily pulled Evelyn and Jacob into the circle, and for a moment, the troubles of the past days faded away. Later, as the guests departed, Reverend Grant lingered. "Jacob, Evelyn, might I have a word?" They sat at the kitchen table while Lily played with her doll by the fire. "I've been thinking," the Reverend began, "about providence, about how God works in mysterious ways." "Abel," Jacob warned, "if this is about—" "Hear me out." The Reverend smiled. "A little girl prays for a mother. A woman gets on the wrong train. A powerful man overplays his hand. And through it all, 2 people find each other." He looked at them meaningfully. "Maybe it wasn't the wrong train after all." "Reverend," Evelyn said softly, "are you suggesting—" "I'm suggesting that when God answers prayers, he rarely does it the way we expect." He stood. "I'll be holding a special service Sunday about Thanksgiving and New Beginnings, in case anyone's interested." After he left, Jacob and Evelyn sat in silence. Finally, Jacob spoke. "He's not subtle, is he?" "No," Evelyn agreed. "But maybe subtle isn't what we need." Jacob stood and walked to the window, watching the rain. "I told myself I'd never marry again, that it wouldn't be fair to Sarah's memory. And now—" He turned to her. "Now I think Sarah would box my ears for being a fool. She'd say life is for living, not for mourning." He returned to the table, taking her hands. "Evelyn Hart, I know we've only known each other days, but—" "Papa," Lily appeared at his elbow. "Are you proposing—" "Lily, were you eavesdropping?" "Maybe." She looked unrepentant. "Well, are you—" Jacob looked at Evelyn, who was trying not to laugh. "I'm trying to, but it's hard with an audience." "I'll help," Lily offered. "Miss Evelyn, Papa wants to know if you'll marry us. Marry him and be my mama." She paused. "Please." Evelyn looked at the 2 faces watching her with such hope. She thought of the trains that might have carried her elsewhere, the plans that had gone astray, the unexpected path that had led her here. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to both of you." Lily shrieked with joy. throwing her arms around Evelyn. Jacob's smile was like sunrise after a long night. "Really?" he asked. "You're sure?"
"I'm sure."
She reached up to touch his face.
"This is where I belong."
He kissed her then, while Lily danced around them singing, "I'm Getting a Mama," at the top of her lungs. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the land clean, filling the streams, promising new growth. It was fitting, Evelyn thought. Everything was being made new, the land, their lives, their family. "We should tell Sheriff Watson," she said suddenly. "About the engagement." Jacob looked confused. "About Boone's threat. He might try something before he leaves town." Jacob sobered. "You're right. I'll ride in." "We'll ride in," Evelyn corrected. "Together. All three of us," Lily added. And so they did, riding through the rain to town, delivering their news to the sheriff and then to Reverend Grant, who beamed like he'd personally arranged the match. At the train station, they watched from a distance as Boone boarded the evening train, his face dark with rage. He saw them, and for a moment, Evelyn thought he might make one last threat. But Sheriff Watson stepped into view, hand resting on his gun, and Boone thought better of it. As the train pulled away, carrying Silas Boone out of their lives, Lily tugged on Evelyn's sleeve. "Is it over now?"
"This part is,"
Evelyn said, "but the best part is just beginning." They rode home through puddles and mud, Lily singing hymns, Jacob and Evelyn sharing smiles over her head. The ranch looked different in the rain renewed, hopeful, full of possibility. That night, as they tucked Lily into bed, she asked, "When you marry Papa, can I call you Mama?" Evelyn's throat tightened. "I would be honored." "Good," Lily yawned. "I knew God would answer. He just took the long way around." Later, standing on the porch, Jacob and Evelyn watched the rain fall on the land that would soon be theirs together. "No regrets?" Jacob asked. "None," Evelyn assured him. "I got on the wrong train. Remember, this is exactly where I was meant to be." 1 year later, the Reed and Hart Ranch sprawled under the wide Wyoming sky. Transformed from its struggling days, the new barn stood proud where the old one had burned. Raised by neighbors' hands and blessed by Reverend Grant. Fresh paint gleamed on the house, and the sound of water running freely from the repaired wells made music sweeter than any symphony. Evelyn stood in what had once been Sarah's sewing room, now transformed into a small schoolhouse where she taught reading and writing to the valley's children and women. Through the window, she could see Jacob working with their expanded herd, his movements sure and confident. The drought had broken completely, bringing 2 good seasons that had restored both land and hope.
Mrs. Reed."
Mary Henderson raised her hand.
"How do you spell perseverance?"
Evelyn smiled. Writing the word on the slate board, perseverance. It means continuing despite difficulties. "Like you and Mr. Reed did," young Tommy Henderson piped up. "Exactly like that," Evelyn agreed, her hand unconsciously going to the slight swell of her belly. The baby would come with the spring, another blessing in a year full of them. After dismissing her students, she found Lily in the garden, carefully tending the vegetables they'd planted together. At 8, the girl had grown taller, her face losing its baby roundness but keeping its sweet earnestness.
"Mama,"
Lily said the name still made Evelyn's heart sing.
"look how big the tomatoes are getting."
"They're beautiful. Sweetheart, your grandmother Sarah would be proud." They often spoke of Sarah now, keeping her memory alive while building new traditions. The silver hairpin that had been Evelyn's mother's now held Lily's braids on Sundays, a symbol of family continuing through generations. "Riders coming," Jacob called from the corral. Evelyn shaded her eyes, recognizing Emma Hargreaves's buggy, accompanied by several men on horseback. As they drew closer, she saw they were carrying rolled papers and wearing official expressions.
Mrs. Reed,"
Emma called cheerfully. "We bring news from the territorial capital." The group gathered on the porch as one of the men, a government surveyor, unrolled his documents. Mrs. Reed, Mr. Reed. I'm Samuel Morrison from the Land Office. We've been investigating some irregularities in local property claims. Evelyn and Jacob exchanged worried glances. What kind of irregularities? It seems several claims filed by the late Silas Boone were fraudulent. Morrison explained. He used forged documents to claim mineral rights and water access that rightfully belonged to established homesteaders. Boone's dead? Jacob asked, surprised. Emma leaned forward conspiratorially. Train accident in Colorado. Seems he was running from other legal troubles and tried to jump between cars while it was moving. Didn't make it. Morrison cleared his throat. The point is, we've been reviewing original claims and surveys. Mrs. Reed. Were you aware your maiden name was Hart? Yes, of course. And your mother's maiden name was Westbrook. Evelyn nodded, confused. Yes, but... Then this might interest you. Morrison produced another document, older and more official-looking. Theodore Westbrook filed one of the first water surveys in this region in 1851. As his last surviving descendant, you have claim to those water rights. The porch fell silent. Evelyn stared at the papers. My grandfather, but he died before I was born. Mother never said... Perhaps she didn't know. Morrison suggested, the records were misfiled for decades, but with Boone's fraud exposed, we've been verifying all claims. He smiled. Congratulations, Mrs. Reed. You and your husband now own the water rights to nearly the entire valley. But what about Turner? Jacob asked. He's been buying up land. And Mr. Turner has been most cooperative. Morrison said. In fact, he suggested we investigate your wife's family connections. Said something about preferring neighbors who earned their place. After the officials left, leaving behind papers that secured their future, the family sat in stunned silence. God does work in mysterious ways. Evelyn finally said, the longest ways possible. Jacob agreed, pulling her close. But worth the journey. That evening, the valley gathered for the autumn harvest celebration. The town hall overflowed with families, food, and music. Evelyn watched from the refreshment table as Jacob danced with Lily, both of them laughing as they spun. Hard to believe it's only been a year, Emma Hargreaves said, joining her. Seems like you've always been here. Feels that way to me too, Evelyn admitted. I owe you an apology. Emma continued. When you first arrived, I was quick to judge, quick to gossip. You've taught this old woman a thing or two about courage. We've all learned from each other, Evelyn said graciously. That's what community means. Turner appeared at her elbow, cup of cider in hand. Mrs. Reed, congratulations on the water rights discovery. Thank you for your help in uncovering it. He shrugged. I told you I prefer honest competition. Besides, you've proven good for the valley. That school of yours is raising literacy rates. The water sharing agreement you drafted is fair to everyone. Even helped me see some opportunities I'd missed. Such as cooperation instead of domination. Amazing how much more profitable it can be when your neighbors succeed alongside you. He raised his cup. 2 wrong trains and right destinations. As the evening progressed, Reverend Grant called for attention. Friends, we gather tonight not just to celebrate the harvest, but to remember how far we've come. A year ago, this valley was divided by drought, fear, and greed. Today, we stand united. Here, here, voices called out. I'm reminded, the Reverend continued, of the parable of the mustard seed. The smallest seed grows into the largest garden plant. So too did one small act, a child's prayer for a mother, grow into something that transformed our entire community. Lily, standing with her parents, blushed but smiled proudly. Let us remember, Grant concluded, that miracles often come disguised as accidents, and blessings frequently arrive on the wrong train. Laughter and applause filled the hall. The fiddler struck up another tune, and couples filled the dance floor. Jacob offered Evelyn his hand. "May I have this dance? Mrs. Reed." "Always, Mr. Reed." They danced while Lily played with the other children, her laughter bright as bells. Around them, the community that had once whispered now celebrated together. The banker who doubted Jacob's prospects now sought his advice on cattle investments. The women who judged Evelyn now brought their daughters to her school. "Do you ever wonder," Jacob murmured as they swayed, "what would have happened if you'd gotten on the right train?"
"Then it wouldn't have been the right train,"
Evelyn replied. "This is where I was meant to be, where we were meant to be." His hand spread protectively over her growing belly.
"All of us." "And all of us," she agreed.
As the evening wound down, families began departing with promises to help with the barn raising at the Olson place next week. The spirit of cooperation Evelyn and Jacob's story had inspired continued to ripple outward. Walking home under stars brilliant in the clear autumn sky, Lily between them swinging their hands. Evelyn reflected on the journey, from a desperate mail-order bride fleeing disappointment to a respected member of the community, wife, mother, and teacher. The transformation still amazed her.
"Mama,"
Lily said sleepily,
"will you tell the baby about how you got off at the wrong station?"
"Every night if they want to hear it," Evelyn promised.
"Good, it's the best story."
Lily yawned. "Better than fairy tales, 'cause it's real." Back at the ranch, after Lily was tucked in bed, Evelyn and Jacob sat on the porch as had become their custom. The night was cool but not cold, autumn's gift before winter's arrival.
"I've been thinking about expanding the school,"
Evelyn said.
"Maybe bringing in another teacher, offering more advanced classes."
"Turner would probably contribute," Jacob mused. "He's been talking about an educated workforce for his new ventures."
"And I thought we could add a library, books for lending, a place for people to gather and read."
"Sarah would have loved that," Jacob said softly.
"She always said education was the key to everything."
"Then we'll dedicate it to her memory, the Sarah Reed Memorial Library." Jacob kissed her temple. "Have I told you today how grateful I am for that wrong train, that mixed-up letter, that stubborn woman who wouldn't let a little thing like mistaken identity stop her?"
"Only 3 times.
Evelyn teased.
"You're falling behind your daily average."
He laughed, the sound rich and full, the laugh of a man who'd remembered how to be happy. "Then let me make it 4. I'm grateful. Evelyn Reed, for you, for our family, for this life we've built."
"Built together,"
she corrected, "and still building." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. In the distance, a coyote called, answered by another wild voices in the vast western night, but no longer threatening. They were simply part of the land, as Evelyn and Jacob had become part of it too. The silver hairpin caught moonlight as Evelyn adjusted it in her hair. Her mother's legacy lived on, just as Sarah's did, woven into the fabric of daily life. The ranch prospered not just in cattle and crops, but in love and purpose. "Next year," Jacob said suddenly, "I want to try those new wheat varieties Morrison mentioned. Maybe dedicate some acreage to experimentation. And I want to start a correspondence with other frontier teachers, share methods and materials." "Big dreams," he said approvingly.
"Why not? We've already proved dreams can come true."
She stood, offering him her hand. "Even the ones that arrive at the wrong station." He took her hand, rising to join her.
"Especially those ones."
Inside the house that had once echoed with loneliness, life thrived. Lily's drawings decorated the walls. Books filled shelves Jacob had built. The kitchen smelled of bread and herbs from Evelyn's garden. It was a home in every sense, shelter from storms. Certainly, but more than that. It was a place where prayers were answered in unexpected ways and love grew as surely as the wheat in the fields. As they prepared for bed, Evelyn paused at the window. The new barn stood solid against the sky, symbol of community and resurrection. The wells pumped steadily, water secured by papers and principle alike. And somewhere in the darkness, that same train line that had brought her here carried other souls toward their own destinies. "Wrong station," she murmured with a smile.
"Right destination."
"What's that, love?" Jacob asked.
"Just thinking how God works in mysterious ways. Lily was right, he does answer prayers. He just takes the scenic route."
"The very scenic route," Jacob agreed, drawing her close.
"But the view's been worth it."
Outside, the wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of rain and promise. The territory stretched vast and wild, still dangerous, still demanding, but also beautiful, honest, and full of possibility for those brave enough to claim it. Evelyn Reed, former mail-order bride, current teacher, wife, and soon-to-be mother of 2, closed her eyes and gave thanks. For wrong trains and right choices, for burnt barns and helping hands, for little girls who prayed and fathers who learned to love again. But most of all, for the courage to step off at the wrong station and discover it had been the right one all along. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, courage, and new beginnings in the Old West. I hope Evelyn and Jacob's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening from? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to know whether you're enjoying this tale from a big city, a small town, or somewhere in between. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Night for more tales of romance, adventure, and the indomitable human spirit set against the backdrop of America's frontier. Don't forget to hit that like button, and if you really love the story, please hit the hype button to help more people discover these tales of the Wild West. Your support helps keep these stories alive for listeners everywhere. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward your dreams even if you have to take the wrong train to get there.